let's start off, Scott. Would you mind just kind of describing to me, telling me your background?
I'm a body language expert and analyst, and I mostly do training and interrogating. So I train law enforcement and the military in interrogation and body language. And then if there are, let's say, a lot of things I do are for embezzlers. If somebody's stolen a bunch of money from a bank or something, then I'll go talk to the person or people they think that have taken that. So that's for the most part what I do. But it's a whole lot of training.
So, what got you interested in that?
When I was a little kid, my father was a doctor, and he would tell me what somebody was when they would come to the hospital because I'd go hang out with him for lunch and things like that, and he'd tell me what was. I'd say, "What's wrong with that guy?" And he'd say, "Well, his leg hurts because he was limping." I said, "Oh, okay," because I was 6 or 7, and then I'd say, "Well, what's wrong with that guy?" So he's probably got an infection because he was coughing a lot. So he'd tell me all these things that just fascinated me. And one time we saw. My whole family, my mom would come and get my brother and sister and I we live in Louisa, Kentucky, tiny little town. And she'd come next door and get us because we lived next to the school and walk us down to the hospital, which was, 3 blocks away because the town was really small. My dad was the only doctor. And the only time we got to see him was for lunch sometimes, maybe once a week. So we'd go down there and have lunch with him. And then when we were having lunch and we were in his office, which was like a big closet because this hospital was just 2 houses stuck together,
Mhm.
with a little thing between them. Well, I saw a couple of friends of mine sitting in the waiting room, and it was Billy Elkins and Robert Bellamy. That's who it was.
Hmm.
And I remember saying, "What's wrong with these guys?" And however you say it as a kid, I know those guys. What's wrong with them? And he said, "Well, let's take a look." And so he looked over and he said, "Well, Billy is pretending he's got an earache, but he's not sick. So he wanted to skip school." And he goes, "Robert really is sick. So he's here for me to check his ear out, and he's got an earache, so we'll get that taken care of."
Oh,
And
wow.
I said, "Well, how do you know that?" And he said, "Well, let's look at Billy's mother." I said, "Oh, because we knew her." And I said, "Okay." He said, "See how she doesn't look like she usually looks. Usually her hair is done. She has on makeup and all that." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "She doesn't have that. That tells me she's been up all night. She's worried about Billy." I said, "Oh." And he said, "See how his hand's on his ear?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "That tells me his ear hurts." And he was leaning on his mom. And I said, "Well, what about Robert? How do you know that he's not sick?" And he said, "Well, look at him." And he was sitting on this old bench. He said, "See how his legs are dangling like that?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "See how he's looking at that little magazine?" I can't remember the name of the magazine. It was one of those magazines
Like
kids
Boy's
read all
Life
the
or
time.
something.
Yeah, one of those, with
Yeah.
pictures and stuff in it. And he said, "Now what's going to happen is this." He said, "In just a minute, his mother's going to lean over and say something to him. She's going to pat him. And then his face is going to change. He's going to make a sad face. He's going to look at her from the side and tell her something. And then she'll pat him again. Then he'll go back to reading look at that little magazine. And then his happy face will come back, his normal face." And I said, "Okay." And within like a minute, I think, if I remember correctly, that's what happened. Everything he said would happen just happened. And
Hmm.
it fascinated me from that day forward what someone was going to do next. So I
Right.
just focused on that all the time. And he would bring home studies and things he'd find out about body language. But before they called it body language, and he would tell me things about behavior and how you could tell when something's going to happen. So that's where my fascination with it started. Was
And
there.
Scott, you've worked on. Give us an example of some of the cases you've worked on over the years.
It wouldn't be anything that anybody would know. It's not.
But like the
It's
type of crimes, the type of. I mean, have you done like murder cases and robberies,
man.
things like that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 My favorites though are as horrible as this sounds because homicide and robberies are the most famous. But for me, it's dealing with playing the chess game of someone who's embezzling. I love that. I
Mm.
absolutely love it. And those are crimes. It's true crime, but it's not very exciting as far as that goes. But it's that mental game you play with people. But I still deal with people who are stealing from a Walgreens or something like that, or somebody that works at the Walgreens is stealing money out of the cash register, those kind of things. Most
Right.
of it's not very exciting, you know.
Now, I first heard about the behavior panel with CrimeCon a few years ago, and now
Mm.
you have your own channel as well. And a few weeks ago, when I interviewed Lori Daybell, I had so many people send me your video, and I was able to watch it. And tell me how the YouTube thing came to be as far as launching your channel and working with the behavior panel.
Okay, first let me talk about that interview you did. You did such a good job of keeping her attention. I know that personality type, and I know how hard that is. And she would just start talking about herself, and you would always laugh, and you'd play up to that ego. You did that so well. I think you've got the wrong gig, man, because I really think you should study interrogation because I think you'd be awesome at it. Because you kept her there without getting on her nerves. That's hard to do, man. It really
Well,
is, and you did a really good job of it. It was so impressive.
I
And all the
appreciate
guys on
that.
the other guys on the
The
behavior,
challenge, Scott, and you might know this, is someone that's obsessed with themselves, or someone that she clearly wanted to get points across. And I knew she'd want to keep going back to the religion stuff. But as an interviewer, you've got to keep the thing moving.
mm,
And so, she could have filibustered the whole time. And maybe if I wasn't tight on time, I would have let her go a little bit more. So it was kind of a balancing act to not offend her. I don't want her to walk out, but
yeah.
also keep to the points that I want to ask her.
Yeah, man, you did such a good, that's tough to do. And that's why I keep saying it's tough to do because I know how hard that is. But you didn't make her mad because that personality type can flip on you, man, and then it's over, yeah,
Yeah.
as you know. So that's fairly impressive. I thought you did a great job with that.
Well,
Really good
thank
job
you.
with that.
What was
Yeah.
your, oh, let's pivot to that interview for a minute then. What was your
Okay.
overall take of her behavior and her body language?
That could be the prototypical personality type like that. You have all kind. You have the high end narcissist. Some people think, oh, she's a psychopath. She's not a psychopath. She's just a clinical narcissist with some other things sprinkled in there. That I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist, so I can't go in and say she's a this or she's a that. But on the narcissism scale, that's high end right there. You're dealing with somebody who's gone through a lot of emotional and trauma from wherever it's come from, because that's what happens, from when that happens. It could be from that cult thing she was in, or from her husband, or from her parent, who knows? But that's the kind of personality type you get when you're dealing with heavy psychological trauma. That's one of the things that leads to it. Not the same every time, but that's one of them.
Yeah. And for those of you that haven't seen it, you can go to Scott's channel and watch the whole analysis of the interview. And there's some interesting points in there, and interesting too how you're able to see, if she looks away. I'm sure you noticed she kept looking off to the left. Her private investigator was here, but I don't want to say it was a crutch. It was everything, almost every answer. She's looking to the side. What does that tell you?
Well, she wants to engage, but there are two or three things you could look at that and say, here's what's probably happened with this. And you have to say probably or most likely, because when you're dealing with human behavior, it's not the same thing every time. For example, there are no body language cues that tell you somebody's lying every time. There's nothing like that. There are no absolutes. So when she's looking over there, she's at the same time, while she has your attention, she has the power to look over there and you can't say anything about it. So she's got you on the hook there. She can be as rude as she wants. She can, like she was being, she didn't really say bye to you either. So that got on my last nerve. I don't think I mentioned that. When she leaves, she really doesn't say anything to you. But oh yeah, so she can look up, she can do whatever she wants in that situation because she's the one in control of that. She doesn't have control of much since she's in prison. She can control how much she eats. If she doesn't, with the amount of food she gives, she can eat all of it or not. She can control if she goes and takes a shower or not. Those are about the only two things she's got that she can control. So she's got you in the room and she's dealing with these other people because she's almost got you captured, in other words, because you're there for a reason. You've got something to do. She knows it and she's doing you a favor from the way she sees it. So you owe her so she can treat you that way. Even though that sounds way out there, that gives you an insight to the way she would treat everyone else in her life, I'm sure. Would be that same way. If I do anything for you at all, just me being there is a gift for you. Me being here, you're lucky to have me here, and I'm going to do whatever I want. I don't have to focus on you because you're not really doing anything for me because I'm doing it all for you. That's the way they usually
Interesting.
see that.
I have heard that from people who have been close to her over the past few years, as far as the legal system, that's kind of her behavior. We actually saw some of that during her trial the one day with the judge, Judge Boreski, when she started to interrupt and was rude, and then she turns it on him and says, "Don't raise your voice at me. Don't yell at me." That's the day he ordered her to be taken out of the
Yeah.
courtroom, where it flipped so quickly from where she was actually doing all of the behavior she was accusing him of doing to her.
Oh yeah, that's the key. No matter what I'm doing, I blame you for it. I tell you, you're doing. You see it in politics all the time. You see it as you know, in the news world all the time. I blame what you're doing is I'm doing, but you're doing that, and that's horrible what you're doing. Even though I'm over here doing it.
Yeah.
So that's just one of those weird little control tactics that people use to take control of the situation, especially when you're dealing with a high-end narcissist like that.
Then on the other end of the spectrum, or maybe not on the other end, but definitely different personality traits, you have Bryan Kohberger.
Hmm.
What have your observations been seeing him in court, especially the sentencing hearing a few weeks ago where he declined to speak. He sat there stone faced the whole time. What are your thoughts about him?
Well, when you're dealing with someone on the autism spectrum, so that's a whole other thing in itself. When you're dealing with autism, I'm semi versed in that because I've spent a lot of time with people that are autistic, and I understand what we're seeing with him there. And so you could say there's that. That's definitely a part of what we're seeing. At the same time, we're seeing someone who has no empathy, who doesn't feel sorry for anybody, who has no sympathy for anyone. So that, in my opinion, the guy is, if he's not a psychopath, you'd have to know for sure by doing an fMRI of his brain. But boy, he's really close if he's not. So we're seeing two different things there, all coming together as one thing. So that's an odd personality type. I mean, it's the scariest kind because I'm sure those kids in the house were horrified seeing that guy walk around. I wasn't there, we don't have any video or anything, but just knowing that personality type and how they would approach that, how scary that must have been to see that coming at you or to see that unfold, not just having a knife and all that, but the very beginning of it. Because when you jump out and scare somebody at their house or your roommate or something, or your wife or your husband or kids, that's the first thing they're thinking of. That's the horror show they think's going on in their head, is that first few seconds of seeing someone like that, with a mask on, moving slow in the dark, not supposed to be there. It's late. So it's that personality type is obviously they think they're the I hate to keep bringing up narcissism because narcissism is overused, narcissist, but he thinks of himself so highly that he pulled it off perfectly, that he was under the impression everything he was doing was right and perfect. Maybe not morally right, but right for the job he was doing or the project he was doing.
Do you foresee someone with that type of personality doing an interview maybe or wanting publicity? Lori Daybell likes the cameras. She does her hair, she puts on makeup. We see her. I mean, she agreed to talk to me. Do you see someone like Bryan Kohberger doing that, or is he maybe the type of personality that will go to prison and that's that?
He's pretty much, it looked to me like he was pretty resigned to what was happening. He understands what's happening. Um, where Lori is more, it's more about look at me, and she's real loud and all that. She's not on the autism spectrum, obviously, but him being usually the people with autism, they're fairly logical. So it's logical for him to see where he is in this situation and accept it and go forward. There's not much pushback against that or anything. And one of the reasons I think that he didn't say much in court was because it's probably what his lawyers told him. They said, you're a weirdo, man. You say this, and that's it. Just say this one line here, and then sit back, and that's it. He didn't say anything, really. I mean, for the most part, until that one line. Said that, and then moved on. That was it. So he
And
takes
it
the
seemed as if it
instructions.
had been rehearsed, like you said. It said, "I respectfully decline." I think that's what he said. It's like he
Yeah.
had been prepared to say it at that time, and he was ready to say it.
Yeah, yeah, not much to say. So he remembered it, and I'm sure it's having that run through his brain the whole time, waiting for that moment when he said it. Another reason it sounded so odd because he's trying to say it perfectly the way they told him to say it.
Yeah. So Scott, I want to ask you, for our people watching, do you have any suggestions or tips on how we can maybe better read people? I mean, I know that's a broad question, but there's
Yeah.
a lot of people that might start to date someone, and the people are really idiots, but we don't see it. What are some suggestions or tips that you would give, just overall in general, when we meet somebody, how to make sure they're genuine, or how to not be, sucked into somebody who's a con artist?
Okay, here's some of the main things to look for. When you first, when someone, let's go to the wall with this. Let's go to the far end and go. Let's say you meet a psychopath. What's going to happen? Because that's the big fear. I'm going to meet a psychopath. The next thing you know, so when you meet a psychopath, what usually happens is this: when you finish meeting that person, you think you've met a kindred spirit. You think you can't believe you've gone your whole life without meeting this person. You can't believe there's a person this much like you that you get along with and like so much, and gosh, they like you that much, and everything just went so good. You just can't believe it. Now you wait about an hour after that, and if you still feel that way, it may be okay. But after you leave there, you may say to yourself, why do I feel that way? What's, yeah, he's a great guy or whatever, but something's not right about that. Most of the time, you feel like something isn't right there, and then you'll try to dismiss those things because everything else was so right. But what you're seeing in a psychopath is you're seeing yourself, because what a psychopath does, they just mirror what you're doing. You may talk about sports, man. They'll talk about sports and how it affected their life, and even though they're making it up, and how important it was, and their father played this role in their playing sports, and he was always at the game. It would just go on, and it will be similar to yours. Then you'll notice they'll start talking. If you talk with a lilt, they may add a little bit of lilt to their conversation, the way they're talking to their voice and their vernacular. They'll start using the same types of words you use. Even though we all communicate in a different way, and everybody's unique, there are three styles of communication that everybody falls under. You have visual, then you have auditory, then you have this kinesthetic thing, or the touchy, feely stuff. So if you're talking to a psychopath, quite often what they'll do is, and one way you can help get you to get along with people in a negotiation, let's say, as well, you can use this tactic, is they'll start saying, they'll listen to how you talk, and they'll say, you'll say, if you're looking from a visual perspective, I see what you're saying. That looks good to me. They'll start talking that way too. They'll start talking and referencing things that have to do with vision. They'll tell you how things look to them. They'll talk about maybe art or something, or the way the mountains look, or the sky. Look at the sky. So a lot of things will start revolving around that. If it's auditory, I hear what you're saying. That sounds good to me. It'll be those kind of things. And if it's the kinesthetic, touchy-feely thing, they'll say that her personality is a little bit rough. It's rocky. This didn't start off well because it was whatever. And those things will be what everything is based on. Are those three styles of communication. So you'll listen for that. And if everything tends to be, if they figure out you're a visual, auditory, or kinesthetic person, they'll couch everything in that range.
Hmm.
Also, listen to them talk about future plans. They're already planning stuff for you to do. They'll say, well, in the future, we got to go see the art thing. It's so and so. We've got to go fishing. In the whatever spot, and they'll start planning things for the future really quickly, really quickly. So those are just a few things, but those are some important ones to listen for and watch for.
Right. Tell me what you'll be doing at CrimeCon here in a few weeks in Denver.
Well, half of us can't go. So it's going to be me and Greg Hartley. Chase I can't remember what Chase is doing. Mark's going to be in, I think, London at the time and can't go. And maybe Chase is doing a training he can't get out of.
So you're talking about the behavior panel. I guess we should, for people that
Oh,
aren't
yeah.
familiar, what is the behavior panel? How did you all come together?
Well, when the behavior panel is three of us are interrogators and one is a body language expert. And during the pandemic, when COVID first started, we were all bored, but we all knew each other and we talked back and forth. And I finally said, look, man, why don't we all just do video? We'll pick something to talk about. We'll do the Tiger King. That was big back then. We'll talk about the Tiger King. We'll all put up our own channels and then we'll have something. Everybody's like, yeah, we'll do it. So I'll just cut up some videos. We'll talk about each one. We'll go around the room and that'll be it. We got like a whole lot of views on that. So we're like, we should do another one. So we did another one and we did another one. Finally, we named our thing, came up with our own channel, and then started doing videos every Tuesday, every Monday or Tuesday from then on. Sometimes it's Tuesdays, sometimes it's Mondays. So for over 5 years now, that's what we've been doing every week. And we're having the best time doing it because there's nothing. Yeah, nobody, there's nothing in the balance there. Nobody's going to, if you don't get it right, nobody's going to go free, or nobody's going to go to prison because you got it wrong,
Not under
or those
oath.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's fun.
That's the behavior panel, but then you also have your own channel.
Yeah. Yeah. I call it Behavior X. And I've had a channel for 20 years, probably 15 years, or however long YouTube has been up. But I just started really paying attention to it in the past year and a half. Because there's other things that the behavior panel, we do things as a group. We find something we all work and then do. But if you want to do even more than that, you can't get everybody to do those, twice or three times a week. And we all want to do a bunch of stuff, but we can't schedule everything. But for those, usually on Mondays or Tuesdays. So I was like, I'll just do them. I'll do my own. You know, Mark does his and Chase does his, and I'm doing mine. Greg doesn't want to do a channel. So,
That's great. And that's your channel is where people can find your analysis of the Lori Daybell interview.
yeah.
So you'll be at CrimeCon, and are you tackling, the two of you that are going to be there, a specific case, or can you give us a sneak peek of what your session will be about?
I don't think we know exactly what it's going to be
Okay.
yet. It'll be some famous, you know, crime case, but we'll talk about that. And usually what we've done in the past is we'll go in and we'll show videos. We'll say, okay, here's what we're seeing. And we'll ask people out there, what are you seeing? And we'll let them ask questions. So there's a lot of interaction. We have a lot
Right.
of people who've been with us from the beginning, and a lot of them go to CrimeCon, so we get to meet a lot of them. So
Yeah.
we let people ask questions and talk and say what they think. And it's really interesting. Sometimes people that are in the audience will see something you've missed, and they'll go, well, "What about the single shoulder shrug at whatever?" And you go, "Geez, man, I missed that." You
Yeah.
know, so you never know. You know, you never
It,
know.
it's so true. I have viewers do the same thing. They'll message me about something that I'll go back and watch and think, oh, wow, yeah, I didn't even catch that. So that's great. Scott, I appreciate you chatting with me. Is there anything that
Yeah,
you want to
man.
add?
Uh, just that I don't mean to be harping on this, but man, you did such a great job with that. All of us on the behavior panel, like, wow, that guy's pretty good. I was like, I know, because you kept her attention. That's so hard, man. I don't know if you appreciate how tough that was. I know you do this stuff all the time, but dude, that was impressive to keep her right there like that without making her mad. Because even though she'd start talking, you'd still get in there and get around that stuff. Because that would you have 30 minutes, an hour with her?
We had 30 minutes. I stretched it a little bit to 38, I think, total. But yeah, like I said, it was the most challenging interview I've done in 20 years because I knew she was going to play and she came
Hmm.
ready to spar. And I could have got caught up on every little thing she said because she said a lot of untruths, a lot of lies. Um, but it did end with her saying, well, maybe you can come back. So she clearly was thinking there was stuff we hadn't touched on.
Hmm.
She then got in trouble and lost her iPad or her tablet privileges. So anyway,
Ooh.
we're expecting her in Idaho any day now to move back from Arizona. But yeah, I appreciate it, and I appreciate your insight too. It was fun to go back and watch. I guess I'll be honest. I'm glad I didn't know beforehand that you were going to analyze it. Otherwise, I would have had that in my head, like, oh no, what's he going to say? So
Oh.
don't give me a
Oh.
heads up if you do it again.
Okay. I'm gonna ask you if I can use your video because last time I didn't. I was just like, I'm gonna do this and say thanks.
Oh
It's
yeah,
been,
no,
it's
I
easier
appreciate
to
it.
get forgiveness than permission sometimes,
Right, right.
but I just couldn't pass it up. It was so good, you
Well,
know.
thank you, and I'll look
Yeah.
forward to meeting you here in a few weeks in Denver.
Yeah, man. We got to connect while we're there for sure.
Let's
For
do
sure.
it.
I'll give you my number and just text me and we'll connect.
Yeah, that'd be great.